Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with all that's happening on the papers, various stories. I imagine where we're seeing between Wiki and Fubara. Again, they're going back to the trenches, so we're wondering what is happening. Just after there was a peace accord that they signed, and we're saying that it seems as if that peace accord has been thrown away. So we just hope that you stay glued to your TV set as we have some conversation, go through other paper reviews. I am Stella Lashidasho, and I'm doing the program alongside Rachel Tanzi. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. But before we go into the papers, today being the 25th of April 2024, we know that every 25th of April happens to be World Malaria Day, where we get to sanitize people, give them awareness. How can we eliminate malaria? We know that one of the leading causes of death in Africa.
Yes.
Because, I mean, there was a time that was said that Africa was where if you want a white person to die, when they come to Africa, it's more like a dead zone for them. But I'm really happy looking at different faces. I mean, over the years, we've seen people coming up with even vaccination. Recently, we see there's work on having a vaccination so we can eliminate malaria totally. As little as it might look, we've seen that the government are trying their best. You know, we've seen that, I mean, recently there was a card where I was being shared for people for free mosquito net, just in a way to curtail it. And then you and I have talked about the need for having community health workers, where there was a time that they go around making sure that there is no bushy areas, your gutters are being cleaned, and talking about your waterways and all of that. And then a lot of things have been done by either NGOs, government, and all of that. But still, Rachel, we're having the percentage of death. It's not really going down as it should be. And I think this is really worrying in a kind of way, because we're looking forward to a time where we need to do something as a whole, because this is not just in Nigeria. This is something that even the World Health Organization is taking it upon itself to see what can we do to eliminate malaria to its minimum. There are a number of people that will tell you loved ones that they have lost as a result of malaria. And even though we have drugs and all of that, but it seems as if this malaria or this parasite per se is beginning to grow in a way that it's being resistant to even some of the anti-malarias that people are taking. So the need for vaccination is really, really needed. And I think just like I keep saying on every whether World Tuberculosis Day, we shouldn't just stop it on that day. But this is something that we should take all along. I mean, malaria is not something that is just today. It's something that every day, for every time you go to the hospital to be diagnosed, it's either you're actually battling with malaria, and then we do see typhoid being like a brother or sister that do accompany it. So I think there's more that the government needs to do for us to be able to eliminate malaria to its minimal as much as possible as we can do.
No, we always emphasize on the fact that when the government does something and then if it gets to you, you should talk about it, because my house have been able to benefit from the recent sharing of the mosquito net. So at least I can say this is one thing that the government have done that have gotten to us. We've not received any palliative, but since today's World Malaria Day, let's talk about the one we've received, which is the mosquito net. And I believe that many other households too have been able to get it, and then individuals alike have been able to get this mosquito net. And then I keep saying that there's so much that needs to be done concerning malaria, your environment. You see all these gutters and all of that. However, because of the nature of our geographical region, it's going to be really difficult to eliminate the insect mosquito, and then eventually that. Why am I saying so? Is that because we have swampy areas by nature. It doesn't have to do with dirt and all of that. We have mining, for example, ponds, mining ponds, we have rivers, we have water, we have all of these little things that somebody can say, okay, I have a pond, we have a pond at the back of my house. You understand? Just not far away from us, there are swampy areas that they are swampy, and until when it gets to the very dry season, where we call what we call the Hamatan around here, that is when it actually dries. But all year round, it's swampy is very swampy, and we have that spread across not only in Plateau, but we can go to other places. So wherever you are that there is water, be it by your carelessness, that's not clearing your drainage, or just your natural environment has trees, have water, have any damp, moist place that can brood mosquitoes, we will definitely have it. So what does it boil down to? It now boils down to our environment and then what we do. These mosquito nets, for example, make sure you don't sleep out of it. Make sure you have it. Make sure your house have nets, for example. Make sure that, there's a time window in which they get to enter the house. There's a period of time in the morning like this, you leave your doors and your window open, you have no concerns about mosquito. But once the sun starts setting and you're in between the time of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you should know that your doors and everything should be closed, because this is when they get to enter the house. If you have been observant when mosquitoes are most active, then when they get in, then that's when they terrorize you at night, when you are asleep and all of that. So you should also be mindful of those period of time. And then there are also more during the raining season, of course, compared to the other periods of time. And then keep your own environment neat to reduce it. Do you have drainages that you're supposed to be cleaning more often? You're not supposed to give them an environment to brood in. If you store water outside and you leave it open, make sure it's closed, because they are breeding and then these mosquitoes are growing. Whatever you can do, the bottom line, in your own power, to make sure that your environment don't have much mosquitoes, you are also helping yourself and your family at a lesser risk of getting malaria. So on this day, on a day like this, let's talk about it every day, because you might think you haven't fallen sick of malaria, or you just go and they tell you it's +1, you take some few things and you're okay. But thousands of people are dying of, from malaria. We don't just know because you don't know anybody really close to you that have, but people are dying of malaria. So just do whatever it takes, because it builds up. That's one thing also about malaria. It builds up. You might think you're just okay, you have fever here, you take paracetamol, you just have it builds up, and then when it shoots to the high level, that's when it's a silent killer. I think that's the word. Yeah, malaria is a silent killer. So let's just do our own best possible when it comes to our environment and then what we sleep in, that is the mosquito nets and all of that.
You know, I would have said, okay, even though I'm still going to say, let's spread the word about concerning what we need to do. And I like the theme for this year, which it says accelerating the fight against malaria for a more equitable world. We need that world. I mean, especially, you know, people who are mostly victims to malaria, pregnant women, they are prone to die, children below ages 5 and all of that. So we really need to do something collectively to fight this. Well, let's take a look at what our papers have for us this morning, and I will be starting with the Voice of Liberty newspaper. Tinubu launches custom credit scheme across Nigeria. You can find detail of that story in the paper. And probe here we have Kaduna Assembly demands El-Rufai financial transaction. More detail of that story can be found in the paper. Still on the Voice of Liberty, power outages, Nigerians express frustration and demand speedy resolution. Coming from the NBC, stakeholders engage for industry revitalization review of proposed broadcasting revenue system. In a bid to address the economic challenges facing the broadcasting industry, the new Director General of the National Broadcasting Commission, Charles Ibubui, yesterday engaged stakeholders in Abuja for a way forward. You can find more detail, especially for those who are into the broadcasting sector. And then multi-choice lament economic woes. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. Tinubu, DSS repeatedly violated MFLS human rights. Coming from the U.S., you can find more detail of that in the paper. And on the economy, stakeholders want stiffer penalty for crude oil thieves. Federal government revoked 924 dormant mining license eyes new investors. You can find more detail on that story, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On the Daily Times, the big story, Tinubu to judiciary. Undertake reforms for functional justice system, says much can be achieved when institutions of government unite to acknowledge their challenges and brainstorm. Apabio seeks urgent reform in approach of interlocutory appeals in civil cases. CJN charges judiciary to leverage technological innovation to address grave inefficiency and undue influence. You can start with the details on the front page. Kaduna Assembly commences probe into Area 5 financial deals. Federal government addressing root causes of violent extremism, says counter-terrorism boss. Alleged $9.6 billion PNID scam, hearing in EFCC suit against fleeing Britain stalled. You can find details on page 2. Federal government revokes 924 dormant mining licenses as minister decries racketeering. You can find details on page 2. NAF, Nigerian Air Force joint airstrikes, eliminates terrorists and destroy hideouts. You can find details on page 2. We have picture story where we can see rescued hostages from terrorists, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, EFCC goes after P2P operators, that is peer-to-peer operators, hand over 14 forfeited properties to Enugu government. More detailed found on page 4. MRS considers voluntary delisting from the NNGX to hold the EGM. Investors sell off stocks in MTN and others at the NGX ASI declined by 1.20%. Federal government grounds Dana Air flight. More detail found on page 4. The big story on hardship. Federal government kicks off 100 billion naira customer credit scheme. Civil servants to benefit in first phase. More detail of that can be found on page 4. Sanwo-Olu unveils a co-cares initiative to aid over 500,000 households amid the subsidy removal, which we can see the picture story showing that. And concerning insurgents, Zulu calls for establishment of military base in Sambisa, Lake Chad Shore, and others, which we know that has been the area mostly that has been housing these terrorists, where we're seeing here the governor of Borno State is calling for an establishment of a military base. Well, you can look forward to more detail of that story on page 3, and that's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On Daily Independent, Kaduna Assembly demands Area 5 transaction as probe begins. Pro-Wike commissioners reject redeployment, quit Fubara's cabinet. The big story, Keyamo lacks power to suspend Dana Air, coming from aviation experts, says it's gross interference on safety processes and procedures. We're yet to receive any letter from NCAA, coming from Dana source. You can find details on page 29. Obi asks privileged Nigerians to intervene in the area of water and education. Federal government revokes 924 mining licenses to sanitize sector. Civil servants first to benefit from Tinubu's consumer credit scheme. Details can be found on page 7. EFCC hands over 14 forfeited properties to Enugu State. Assets to be deployed for benefit of Enugu people, coming from Governor Mba. We have fulfilled our promises. We've fulfilled our promises, says Sanwo-Olu. Nigeria must redouble efforts to mitigate greenhouse gas emission. This is from the federal government. You can find details on page 6. Tinubu asks judiciary to ensure reforms guarantee Nigeria's well-being. Akpabio assures National Assembly will deliberate enshrine reforms into law. And at the downside of the paper, fire raises goods worth millions of naira in Edo shopping mall. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On First News newspaper, I'm not desperate about 2027 presidency, says Peter Obi. Detail found in the paper. Stop misusing expertise order, Akpabio wants judges. Governor Abiodun donate bus to Ogun, NIPR promises office accommodation. Tinubu approved takeoff of consumer credit scheme for Nigerians. EFCC hands over recovered asset to Enugu Governor Mba. And concerning the UTME, father arrested for taking exam for son. You can find more detail of that. And no wonder we're saying there have been a review that henceforth examination for those who will be getting admission into the tertiary institution, you must be 18 and above. I mean, Rachel, you and I know that we've been to this tertiary institution. You meet kids as low as age 15, 16. I know that these kids, they are still children. They still need directive from their parents, and then you see on the age. So I'm happy the review of the age that henceforth admission, you must be 18 and above. That is to say you are an adult. You can take care of yourself. No wonder we're seeing situations like this where a father had to take the exam for his son. That is to say that the son was not of age, or the son really did not know what he was supposed to do. So we look forward to seeing parents playing their role so that we don't have cases like this coming up on our papers.
Yes, sir.
Still on First News newspaper, the big story coming from Rivers State on Rivers crisis. Again, Wike Fubara returned to the trenches as two commissioners loyal to Wike quit in Fubara's cabinet over redeployment. You can find detail of that in the paper. And this is really a big one, Rachel. I mean, I started by saying there was a memorandum of understanding that they signed, where it was agreed that Wike was going to stay on his lane as being the minister of the FCT, and Fubara will concentrate on governing his state. Now we're seeing that the issue of being loyal to someone else is causing issue here. And I think we have said this, maybe not directly per se, but we know this issue of being loyal to a particular person have a way of affecting. I believe that if you are going to be loyal, you are to be loyal to the seat and not to the person. Wike was the former governor, so you are supposed to be loyal to the seat of the governor, not loyal to the person in that seat. And that is the case we have, whereby we see that the moment this person, if you are loyal to an individual, when the person goes, your loyalty follows the person. So you work against the person that is on that seat, and that is what is happening here. So I really think that something needs to be done about it, because we've said the fact that Rivers State is one of those states that we cannot afford to have crisis coming left, right, and center. We are seeing where the president is talking about the issue of illegal refineries coming up. What can we do about oil theft and all of that? And then when we have our attention being distracted by issues like this, we don't give it the focus that is needed. So let us see how this whole thing turns out to be. But I just hope that they will rectify whatever differences they are having. They should take their grudges out of governance and let governance actually take its place eventually.
Sele, I saw a meme recently, and there was Wike and then River State money, and he's just staring from afar and he can't do anything about it. And I just can't help but, for me, that meme was so apt, because you can't just help but wonder, why is it that Wike won't just let go of Rivers politics or government and face his business? It doesn't matter. Fubara is the current governor. It is his administration. Take your eyes off it. Whatever is the feud, whatever is the problem, whatever is the godfatherism playing there, whatever it is, you're no longer the governor. You should let Rivers thrive under Fubara's administration. It doesn't matter, you're no longer the governor, it's no longer your administration, you're no longer the leader there for whatsoever. This thing needs to stop. And then it is for selfish reasons, for no other, there's no any other reason other than a selfish reason for Wike to be going on like this, and for this feud. It is no longer governance, it's no longer politics, it's no longer for the betterment of the state, it's for nothing more but selfish gains and reason, because it doesn't make sense. Is it that Fubara is trying to take a decision that will tarnish the image of Rivers, and then Wike saying, no, you can't take? No, it's not that. It's nothing. It's just loyalist versus loyalist. It's just who is on this person's side versus who is on this person's side. It's just, I am the Lord, I am the kingpin here, I am the... That's just what is playing at the moment here. So I'm just, and it's shameful for me, that's just the word, without no apologies, is because before I believe that we have a Nigeria that is going to grow, is leadership. And we need to start seeing leaders that know what they are doing. They don't know what they are doing, Sele. We need to see leaders that are selfless. All we have are brood of selfish leaders. And this is an example of it. It's not whatever, because nobody can really put their hands on what it is. They had a closed door meeting. Nobody knew what they decided or agreed. Some of it might be out there, but the real thing, if what was the true problem was solved at that meeting, then we should have been moving forward from there. But since they are back to the trenches, it means that meeting did not solve any problem. We are just still where we are. It's just a show off. It's just let's just do it and we move. But it didn't solve anything. So until we grow to the point where I'm seeing leaders, politicians that are selfless, that know what true governance is, that will separate politics from governance, that will be able to say, you know what, we have moved past this. This is the way forward. Where are we heading to? Until we get there, I believe that we will just be lying to ourselves that we are growing, but we are where we are regardless. We can see the deviation. It's no longer palliative now. It's a consumer scheme, and it starts with civil servant and it will end with civil servant. Whereas palliative is supposed to get to everybody, whereas palliative is supposed to get to the common man, it's supposed to target the poorest of the poor. We are saying that it's no longer there now. It's a scheme now, and it's going to start with civil servants. And the question is, those are earners, Sele. These are civil servants, they earn. The pilots are supposed to get down to the somebody who is not making anything, to the people who are living under the bridges, to the people who are homeless. It's been silenced. And you wonder, do we truly have a government that cares about the citizens? Because you're supposed to care about the vulnerable first. Those are your target. But we keep changing the stories, the narrative, and all of that, and you wonder, where are we going to? So it's the same way until I start seeing that from early, that I believe that we are where we are, because it's leadership that takes us further. And we can say that for what is happening in Rivers between Wiki and Fubara, you are no longer the governor of Rivers. Whatever it is, you're supposed to let it go, because you know what, you will never come back to be the governor of Rivers State again after Fubara. Even if you frustrate him, you will just become the frustrator of administration, whether you like it or not. In the end of the day, that will be your tag. Because if you frustrate him and he's out, when the next one comes, it's like they have to dance to your tune. If they are not dancing to your tune, you will frustrate them. And for how long? You don't own Rivers State. Whether you like it or not, you will die and leave Rivers, and it will continue for as long as Nigeria will continue. That's a fact. So what are we saying? So let's wake up to leaders that know what they are doing and prove to us that they really want us to grow. But until then, we will just remain where we are.
Well, let's just hope we get it right. Just like you said, the problem here is the problem of leadership. We can get it right if only we can get the right leaders. And we keep saying the fact that leadership is a reflection of the people, because you elected them, and you made mention of this godfatherism issue that we're having. You feel because you put him. So imagine if Buhari is to frustrate Tinubu, how is this whole thing going to turn out to be, because they're in the same party? So we hope we get it right as a country. Still on First Newspaper, we have allow opposition to breathe. Edo APC tells PDP as campaign commences. Detail found in the paper. Kaduna Assembly begins Erufai's probe request transaction record. NCAA slam indefinite suspension on Dana Air, and downside on Eco Disco's My Odysseys by Mbato MD and CEO. You can find more detail of that in the paper. We have a picture story here. The Ogun State Governor Prince Dabo being conferred with the Fellowship of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations in Abeokuta on Wednesday. There in Abeokuta, and that's all on First News newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, starting with sports, EPL, Everton dent Liverpool's title hope as Man United survive Sheffield United's scare. You can find details on page 16. At the top of the paper, several Binance-like platforms still operating, causing Naira to depreciate, coming from the BDCs informing the federal government. Nigeria revokes 924 dormant mining titles, 6 new investors. Alake gives owners of revoked license 30 days to redeem them by paying fines. Obi speaks on Labour Party dispute, says it is nothing compared to disquiet in PDP and APC. On Ondo Guba, Mimiko to run on the ZLP, vows to focus on education, health, and economy. Details can be found on page 3. The big story on the paper, rivers of crisis. Tinubu's peace deal collapses, obviously. And the writer is saying more pro-Wike loyalists resign from Fubara's administration after redeployment. And Dango accuses Fubara of interfering in his duties as Attorney General. It is impossible for me to give my best in an atmosphere of rancor. This is coming from Kamalu. Those resigning have refused to shape up to the peace deal Fubara fires back. You can find details on page 2. Kiyama orders NCAA to suspend Dana Air operations pending audit. Kaduna Assembly begins probe of El Rufai's 8 years rule. Federal government launches consumer credit scheme. You can find details on page 10. Why Uri Ngozi Chukwuka is passionate about women with disabilities. Details can be found on page 15. Now we have a picture story where we can see the history maker visit Lagos. That is Guinness World Record holder Tunde Onako visits Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. This took place yesterday at the Lagos State House, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
A New Telegraph newspaper on e-transfer, federal government earning dropped by 10.6% to 45.8 billion naira. More detail found in the paper. Federal government revoked 924 dormant mining licenses, 6 new investors. Tinubu advocates people economic center reform in the judiciary. Hardship not peculiar to Nigeria, coming from Kumi. You can find detail of that in the paper. That's the overseer of the Deeper Life Mission Church. You can find detail of that in the paper. Only God knows who will be alive to contest in 2027 polls, coming from Peter Obi. Plateau governors seek U.S.-Nigeria alliance to end security challenges. More detail found on page 4. The big story on constitutional amendment. Oyedele Tax Reform Committee wants defaulters declare unfit for political posts. Says aspirant must fulfill all tax obligations. Send draft proposal to the National Assembly. Proposes creation of revenue courts and others. And I totally agree with this, because we're beginning to have politicians that feel they are above the law and they do not pay their taxes as it should be. I mean, recently we heard from the Minister of Women Affairs where she was saying as a woman she is not supposed to pay tax, and then she was saying that Nigeria should even be grateful she's paying her tax, and that is not supposed to be heard of. Regardless of your gender, that doesn't stop you from paying your tax, because that tax is needed to fix a number of things that are happening. Here we are complaining about education and power, and then we are having certain political people failing to pay their tax. So I think it should be a must henceforth on the law that for you to be qualified to contest for any political position, you should submit your up-to-date papers that you have paid your tax for every business you're having. That should qualify. I mean, set a good example for Nigerians that we are actually a taxpayer as well. So you can read more detail of that on page 3. And on the issue of electricity, Ban B Lagos community decries zero power supply. More detail found on page 2 and 8. Well, even Ban A are not seeing light, not to talk of Ban B and others. Federal government grounds Dana Air over safety concern. More detail on page 5 and 8. IT sector has the highest number of quacks in Nigeria, coming from the federal government. And I hope we can utilize that and actually turn it to be more legit. More detail found on page 7. Coming from the military, how withers insecurity in the southeast via non-kinetic means. As 16 IPOP camps destroyed in 3 months, 283 clearance operation conducted. More detail on other riders can be found under the paper. We will tackle poverty, insecurity with financial inclusion agenda, coming from the presidency. as Tinubu have approved consumer credit scheme takeoff. More detail found on page 2 and 4. We have a study that says cholesterol screening earlier in life can prevent future heart risks. And I think it's important for everybody to read that study so we can cut down on our cholesterol taking. And that's all on page, that's all on the New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, the big story: consumers lament as food prices rise 30% in 8 states. Beans, garri, semolina orders rise by over 30% despite currency gain. You can find details on page 2. Hills return as fuel scarcity hits Abuja and 5 states. 35 oil firms face probe over environmental pollution. Delayed justice, Tinubu National Assembly demand judicial reforms. 500,000 households to get Lagos palliative, says Sanwo-Olu. And then we are seeing picture story of the distribution of this palliative and other schemes that have been launched. You can find details inside the paper. JAM plans meeting with NIMC over candidates with double NIN. On bullying, parents seek justice after another student speaks out. Police shooting victim, not Lutech student. This is coming from management. You can find details on page 5, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Well, before we continue further with other paper review, we would love to take a break to give you the opportunity to chew the stories and then drop your comment. When we come back, we'll continue with the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. It's still the dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper coming from the palliative shared in Lagos State by the governor, and also we're seeing the consumer scheme that has been flagged off by starting with a civil servant by the presidency. And then also we're seeing what is happening in Rivers State. It seems as if the peace accord has not been used. So quite a number of things are happening. We'd love you to be part of this conversation by dropping your comments and your views. And then you can as well share and also, like, so that other people can also follow and see what is happening on the dailies this morning. I'm Sarah Elisha. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you so much, Rachel. All right, let's continue the paper review by looking at the Nation newspaper. EFCC returns recovered access to Enugu government data found on page 4. House seek documents in probe of El-Rufai administration. And we have Ajayi Mefon orders in battle for Ondo PDP ticket. Makinde vows not to back any candidate older than 52 in the 2027. And I think that is really commendable. We need young and intelligent brains to be able to carry decisions. You can find more detail of that in the paper. And we have DSTV raises subscription rates, and then mining query licenses revoked. More detail found on page 3. And I really think the issue of DSTV, I mean, raising their subscription rate, that is to say, a number of people will be dropping. Richard, there was a time you made an observation where you said, why is our own tariff different? We tend to pay for stations that we don't even watch. Yeah. Why don't we pay as you view? Exactly. Why don't we have that? But other people have that, other countries have that. So why is that peculiar to us here? I mean, when I'm not, for example, if I'm not a sport fan, I don't see a reason why you should put for me all the sports stations. A part of what I'm paying. I should also be watching what I love watching. So let's see what, if DSTV can also do that. I mean, because if you are raising your subscription, then let your viewers or let your customers be able to enjoy what they are paying for eventually. I cannot be paying 10,000, 25,000, and then at the end of the day, I'm only viewing maybe 5 or 10 stations at most. So let's see what they will do concerning that, because the number of people are really, really complaining concerning the subscription.
Sarah, this boils back to our government, and I know it might look like I'm just one of those people that always point hands back to the Nigerian government, but it's a fact. Because did you know when MultiChoice was signing a deal? You don't know. You didn't know. So you were, no masses, no common man was there when the federal government was giving MultiChoice license to operate in the country, stating out what is expected.
I think we need to call Obasanjo to tell us what really happened.
We were not there. So when you have your leaders representing you, and they are just selfish and greedy and not looking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into the future, when they are signing agreements, understanding deals, pacts, and all of that, then you will be at the receiving end. Because I want to believe that the other countries that are able to have access to pay-per-view plans, for example, is because it was in their agreement. It was in their agreement that you will bring these services, these services, these services. Our people will be able to access this service in this form. They will be able to access this service in this form. And this is the only way we can allow you operate in our country. So when they brought it 2 hours, of course, nobody sat down and say, this is how you will operate or you leave. It's more of what are we going to gain from you. This is what you're going to gain from us, and we move. You sign it and you move. I believe that this is just we are now seeing the result of what those things were, because they will operate based on their contract and what they have agreed with the government of the day at that time on what will be your services and how you're going to give it to Nigerians. And now the question is, do we have a government that is willing to sit down and review and say, you know what, this is entertainment, we need it. There's the educational part of it, there's the entertainment part of it, it's all inclusive. So we can't sit down and say, these services, we don't need it. The STV have been our eyes to the world, whether we like it or not. So we can't sit down and say, this is what we don't need. But the accessibility, the affordability is important. There are certain things, cable don't have to become something that is elite. Everything is moving to that level in the country that it looks like basic things that should be accessed by a common man now becomes something that is only for who is who. This is where we are heading towards to, because even the smallest bouquet that they have now is becoming really, really expensive, and then it's starting to look like you have to be rich to even afford the lowest level of DSTV subscription and all of that. So do we have a government that is willing to sit down and review the terms and conditions, the policies that was accepted in the first place when they came in? You can change things for your people and say you will only continue operating if you will now make this and that services for us available. When we had other cables coming in trying to, it was frustrated. The one that could have been indigenous to us and we will be able to have access more affordable, definitely not what we are seeing coming from MultiChoice and all of that. And it was frustrated and it died, and it was very, very good, because I remember we had access to it from the beginning. So what are we saying? It is still the government that determines all of the standard of your living entirely. Is still the government. So I just hope that we have a government that can sit down and say, you know what, MultiChoice, you can complain about economy, so is everybody. but we need to go through our terms of condition, policies, and review it and say, you know what, moving on, if you are willing to operate at this level, then we move on with you. If not, then we find a way forward. Do we have leaders that are willing to sit down, leave their selfish game, and do the review for Nigerians to be able to have a better standard of living? We'll just wait and see.
Well, we just hope they will do it. I think the same thing with MTN as well.
Exactly.
A number of things have been said about that. So let us really, I mean, people have even talked about the fact that with the xenophobia that is going on in South Africa, and then with the way we are being treated, it's really not nice. So we should have a
hated.
So we should be reviewed as we're patronizing your goods. You should do well by taking care of us as well. Let's look at other stories still on the Nation newspaper, where we have government open Nigerians access to consumer credit with 100 billion naira. Scheme to put money in pockets, stimulate manufacturing. Expert speaker program. Okay, you can find more details of that in the paper. Lagos target 500,000 household under a careless-free meal initiative. Telecom firms seek not to raise tariff. More detail of that can be found in the paper. Tax defaulting politicians to be barred from contesting lawmakers to get the bill, and I hope that they will approve this bill as soon as possible. And then the issue happening in Rivers State, Attorney General Finance Commissioner quit Fubara Esco. You can read detail of that on page 4, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, federal government's non-retention policy. Over 5,032 first-class graduates languish amid vacancies in universities. And then we have an infograph here where we can see that of University of Lagos, University of Ibadan. I think this is a breakdown of the top university in the country and the numbers. And then we have another one here that is showing National Universities Commission. To employ a single lecturer, you have to go through 7 MDAs, namely the National University Commission, IPPIS Office, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, Federal Character Commission, Office of the Head of Service. That is a lot. You can find details on page 6. Currency outside banks up by 300% as economy slips into cash herding. You can find details on page 15. Wike's loyalists reject redeployment, resign from Rivers cabinet. And the question is, if you resign, is Wike going to put you on a monthly allowance, or what? Are you giving up your job? You can find details on page 8. Zulum urges establishment of military bases in Sambisa Forest, Mandara Hills. You can find details on page 30. AFCC withdraws appeal against order restraining Yahaya Bello's arrest. Aviators fault interference as federal government grounds Dana air operations. And the last story on the paper, federal government probes bullying incident at British International School in Abuja. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On this day newspaper, Nigeria's Treasury bill auction over subscribed by 254.23%, with the rider Naira maintains slight now 1,308 Naira to a dollar on the official market, and then 1,200 Naira to a dollar on parallel market. Detail of that can be found on page 10. Also, we have EFCC hands over 14 forfeited properties to Enugu government. Sanwo-Olu saying we have offered free food to 5,000 households in Lagos under equal care. Says medical outreach to commence next week. Detail found on page 10. And then coming from the President Tinubu, we need more functional justice system to protect the rights of all citizens. Declare open national summit on justice. Apabio wants abuse of expertise order curbed, and then we owe President for achievement, says Ariwa Light. You can find more detail of that in the paper. And here we have a picture story showing us the National Summit on Justice, where we can see the Vice President. We're also seeing the Senate President. We're also seeing the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and meet other people that will be present during that that summit yesterday in Abuja. And that's all on this day newspaper.
7 aspirants slug it out as Ondo PDP governorship primary holds today. Tinubu approves takeoff of consumer credit scheme. Federal government revokes 924 dormant mining license. You can find details on page 6. The big story, AFCC discovers Yahoo training schools in almost all states. Withdraws appeal against Yahaya Bello. Anti-grab agency boss must exercise restraint else, coming from lawyers. CSOs protest in Lagos frown on media trial. AFCC hands over 14 forfeited properties to Enugu government. And so it's really, I mean, this is what Nigeria is heading towards, that we're seeing Yahoo training school now. And then you wonder on what basis is it existing, and there are students enrolled. So that's what makes it a school, because there have to be a student and there have to be teachers, and you'll be shocked that it's very structural. They might not just graduate with a certificate or be out there and, you know, show a certificate, but okay, this is it. The illegal form of this is, we call it the Yahoo training school. Then the legal one out there is a computer scientist that we have out there that are in school learning how to hack and do all of these cyber activities and all of that. Either way, one is scamming, the other one is making the digital atmosphere much more better. But I just hope, I keep saying, I just hope that there's so much in the digital economy that needs to be explored, and I hope that our government does that, so that we will lead in the IT world, so that we would lead in the digital economy, because we have brains. We do have brains. There's so much that needs to be developed when it comes to digital technology. There's so much that needs to be developed. Imagine if we have a team in the forefront studying, carrying out research and doing something. I just hope that the government of the day invest into information technology, into digital economy. If we have these brains, there's no need for them to hide. There's a legit way. Come up, team up, and come up with an advanced technology for the digital market. And trust me, we will give birth to billionaires, because just as many other sciences is being discovered and uncovered, there's still medicine that we're yet to know. Same as when it comes to the digital space, there's still technology that is yet to be unraveled. Let me put it like that. So I just hope that this is a push for the government of Nigeria to say, you know what, there's so much we need to invest in this, because we can, with the brains we have, we can actually lead when it comes to the digital economy.
Richard, I agree totally with you, because if you look at the New Telegraph, where it said the IT sector has the highest number of quacks in Nigeria, and the question here would be, why do we have more quacks there?
Yeah.
We saw the number of graduates, Richard, on the Guardian News before, over 5,000 class graduates, and then the procedure they need to go just for you to be a lecturer. Mind you, the lecturer is junior lecturer, not a senior lecturer. With all your brains, you have to start from somewhere. So what am I saying? We have all that it takes, Richard, to utilize these brains. And that's why I keep saying, if we are saying that this number, we are having Yahoo training schools, who is to blame for this Yahoo schools we're having? Of course, I know we cannot totally, I'm not encouraging this Yahoo whatsoever in all ramification. I'm against it. But what am I trying to say? What has the government done over the years to utilize it? Richard, for this Yahoo to start, they started from being, I'm a computer scientist. I was taught everything that is needed. I was taught even how to hack a system. It is part of the things you need to learn, because you need to hack into the criminal system. You need to know, if you study criminology, you need to know all of these things. It's a criteria for you to learn. But when we see that after learning all of these things, the government do not provide an enabling grant for you to utilize it and make good use of it, we see that we end up having these things eventually. And so I'm just hoping that since it has been drawn and is on the paper, the government should do something to reduce this number. And that's why from Yahoo we have Yahoo plus, then it becomes plus. Why? Because people just want to be rich and get it quick and easy. So I'm hoping that we'll have, this IT is a place that we can make money as a country, but the government is not utilizing it as they should be. So since we are seeing that this is what the discovery is, let the government utilize it. If you discover that you have this sharp brain that is doing this, grab him and use him in the Nigerian sector. Let us see how Nigeria can, you know, progress. So we look forward to seeing our government taking advantage of this and progressing eventually.
Still on Nigerian Tribune, First Bank emerges best private bank in Nigeria, best for investment in Africa. Federal government suspends Dana Air operations. Rivers Finance Justice Commissioner resign, reject redeployment. West Africa losing primacy in cocoa production, expert warns. You can find details on page 24. We have fulfilled our promises, a statement from Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu launches free food for 500,000 households under Eco Cares. Medical outreach for vulnerable begins next week. Nigeria divided, requires one statesman to unite it, coming from Saraki. And then at the downside of the paper, ban on open grazing still in force, coming from Obaseki. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Let's take a look at the leadership newspaper. 2-week loyalists resign from Fubara's cabinet, and on UTME, father arrested for impersonating son. Detail found inside the paper as well. And what is trending? Abuja female student bullies another girl in a viral video. More detail in the paper. 500 million people face food crisis in West Africa and Sahara. You can find detail of that on page 2. 140-year-old PZ person considers leaving Africa over Nigeria's cell porch, and I was afraid PZ would join soon. And here we're seeing that PZ are actually considering leaving Africa over Nigeria's cell plot. We hope that something will be done about that, because more international companies are leaving. So let's see what the government of the day will do about that. Detail found on page 7. Disquiet as PDP hosts Ondo governorship primary today. Detail found on page 7. Sale of discos, expert Labour wants debt-ridden firms unbundled. Says affected discos overwhelmed by a large franchise. And then we have 6 fresh capital for banks. AMCON run utilities. Detail found on page 4 of the leadership newspaper. Rainstorm destroy old Suleja prisons, several inmates escape. I just hope that something will be done for all the other correctional centers we have in the nation. They need to fix it. As the rain is coming, we don't want to have an issue of prison break. It breaks my heart that, I mean, something is in your state, and then we're seeing that several inmates have escaped, and then we see that we cannot find them. We don't even know where they have escaped to. I mean, this is disheartening, a story making it to the front page of our paper. I hope the government of Suleja, as well as the federal government, will look into what they need to do, because we saw they said that the correctional centers will leave they will leave it in the custody of the state government. So it is the responsibility of Governor Bago of Niger State to have checked what is happening at Suleja prison to be able to fix it. The responsibility of even the governor of Plateau State, Mutfwang, to check what is happening at the correctional center of Plateau State. So I hope that every other state, please check what is the state of the correctional centers. Is there something, is there need for innovations? Because here we see inmates are escaping, and before we realize we're having more criminals on the run. So I hope that the government should check what needs to be done and rectify it before the rains will become very, very serious. And on RFI, probe Kaduna Assembly demands 2015 down to 2023 documents. Detail found on page 6. To enable to the judiciary, give Nigeria functional justice system. You can find more detail of that on page 7. And we have a picture story as well, where we can see during the Justice Summit that took place in Abuja yesterday. And that's all on the leadership newspaper. But Rachel, I'd like you to jump and let's take what's happening on the on the Punch Sport Extra newspaper.
All right, now on Punch Sport Extra, we have the big story: prolific Nigerians who lit up Europe with goals and assists in 2023/2024 sports season, where we can see the like of Osimhen and Chukwueze on the front page. Eagles squad value drops from 345 million euros to 343 million euros. Chukwueze may get Milan lifeline. Atletico inside 90 million euros clause in Omorodion deal. Adesanya reflects on Pereira rivalry, and you can find details on page 2. Rangers not in NPFL title race. Pep open to Barca return. You can find details on page 3. Liverpool in talks with Slot for club. Ten Hag faces 25% pay cut at United. Haaland out of Brighton clash. At the downside of the paper, we have DA hints at return after 10 months out. Details can be found on page 8. On cricket, Nigeria wins ICC award. Nadal uncertain over French Open. You can find details on page 2. And that's all the news on Point Sports Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thanks, Rachel, for doing this with me. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our supporters. Thank you for keeping this moment with us on the dailies. Until we come your way tomorrow, please do have a great day ahead.